We are not your grandmothers and grandfathers in ACP. And I know some chapters that's what I think of. We wanted to make this organization that already existed, that had a name, to see if we could make it work more effectively for justice in our community.
I'm definitely looking
Yeah, we got a lot of hotels going up in West Memphis.
Yeah, and they're not just going up just by coincidence.
If something's going on.
Yes. You know, I mean, you look at right things I can't talk about that's going to be during my administration. You look and say we got a brand new library on Broadway that's going on during my administration. You have Chick-fil-A being constructed during my administration. You have Southland at some point building a 12-story hotel and a convention center during my administration. During my administration, we get ready to build 2 new fire departments. Projected to be on Broadway and Dr. Martin Luther King.
Fire stations.
Yeah, and one on Airport Road.
Good.
And we'll tear down some of the ones that dilapidated and need to go.
Sure.
It's a lot of good things that's getting ready to happen for West Memphis.
Well, I'm glad to hear you talking about these things, and I know it's probably 1,000 times more things going on than what you're talking about. And some things you cannot talk about because they're sensitive areas. But in the past, our people in our communities, we wouldn't know of any of these things until we saw them. We had no input into them. And so now that you're representing all the people as opposed to one segment, we all will have an opportunity from time to time. That's why I want you to come back and talk, because everything that you want to tell us, you can't do it at a city council meeting because that's a different responsibility. But when you want to communicate with us, again, I hope you will remember we are available to get your message out. And the one thing that I want the NAACP to do, which is what we've been doing over the last 8 years, is to inform, to stimulate, and to agitate, and to try to get the community to understand the importance of becoming politically engaged. And you spoke to that very well tonight about being politically engaged. Come to city council meetings. The West Memphis City Council meets the first and third Thursdays of each month. The meetings are at 1:30 p.m. Some people complain, well, why do they have it in the middle of the day? Well, and I was one of those, but let me say this: they did move it once to I think 6 or 7, and the people didn't show up.
But you know, not only the city council meeting, I would like people to go to the utility department, A&P meeting, all these meetings that we do.
School boards.
School board that decide your tax dollar.
Quorum Court is something that I found that most people don't even know what they do, and that's a very powerful organization. They have they are to the county what the city council is to the city.
And the Quorum Court is made up of majority of West Memphians member.
It is.
Than any other member in the county.
13 seats.
Yeah. So
and let me give a shout out to some of my brothers that are no longer here with us. But I got involved, I would say, starting with Mr. Chitman, when there was so much efforts to try to keep him from taking his seat. It upset me, and I started to write. And then from that point on, and later on, I met Vicki Robinson and her husband, Mr. Reginald Robinson. We called him TK. He was a genius. He was a political genius. If you were talking to him, you wouldn't know that. He just talked like a regular person, very big guy. But he began the process of redistricting legislation. When Mr. Chitman took office in 1983, there were only 2 blacks on the city council. And that was all we could get because the city wards were drawn in such a way that's all we could get. But once we got through, under his leadership, by the early 90s, we went from 2 to 4. Now we have 6 blacks out of 10. And so, and I want to give a shout out to him. And I feel in some way, your becoming mayor is an end result, because that was our dream. To get more blacks in office. We got black state representatives, black state senators, black judges. Eventually, we redrew the political boundaries for Quorum Court and City Council. And I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
As a young City Council person, I had the opportunity to honor Mr. Reginald T.K. Robinson. So, I mean, he meant a lot to our community. he did a lot more than what people think.
Oh,
and
yeah.
was, and was very unappreciated at that time.
Well, he didn't care. But every year when it was election time, he would have a whole house full of people because everybody went there because they wanted his expertise. Back then we didn't have computers. I think they were the first people who had a computer. I didn't even know what they were. And we literally got out and would walk the north side and the south side to determine where the voters were. Yeah. And so because we were doing our own demographic surveys, so we could determine where or who was where, so we could redraw those political boundaries. And so we didn't have any blacks on the city council, so we've come a long way. A lot of times people say, well, you hadn't done very much, and sometimes I know it sounds like, but everything happens incrementally. Yeah. And so you becoming mayor is just furthering us along in our political evolution. Exactly. And we thank you, because now we wouldn't have you had you not come out to run, because you could have stayed home like everybody else said. It's too hard, it's too expensive, and it is. It is too hard, it is too expensive, it is too time consuming. And I know because I've run a couple of times. But we thank you, and again, Vice President, do you have anything to add?
That's it.
Well, we want to end because we know our mayor has got a lot to do. I remember when Barack Obama was president-elect and the economy was tanking, and people started saying, come on, dude, we want you to do something now. Yeah. He was saying, well, I'm not the president yet. Exactly. But they were expecting him to do. Nelson Mandela, before he took office, the people said, Madiba, they called him Madiba. We need you to do something. But he's just a private citizen, so people have great expectations of it. And I want people to understand, as much as you have great expectations of our new mayor, Mr. McClendon, raise your expectations of yourself. Get out and get involved. Get registered to vote. Make sure that your friends vote. That's why we talk about race, religion, and politics, because all of these things affect us. We have to be engaged in every aspect of our community. Don't wait for Mr. McClendon to do it. Write Mr. McClendon a letter. We're going to write Mr. McClendon a letter, and we're going to give him a list of things that we want to see done in this community. Don't put him in office and then sit back and see what he's going to do. You know, work with him. He'll invite you. Just be respectful. And city council meetings again are at 1:30 p.m. first and third Thursdays. Show up. If you want to have something to say, you have to sign up a few days early to be on the agenda, and you'll have 5 minutes to get up and tell the mayor and the city council what you think. Again, be respectful. And we also need to remember, we also have the first black city clerk.
Yes, we do.
And that's Miss Joyce Gray, what's her name?
Tillis.
So we want to congratulate her on her win. So things are changing. So, but remember this, people, be the change that you want to see. All right. And this is, we're going to say goodnight to you. And check us out on Facebook. And let us know what you think. You can reach the NAACP office at 870-735-1212. That's Tuesday through Friday from 11 to 4. You can also email us at shabaka50@aol.com. You can go on our website at www.CrittenCountyNAACP.com. And peace. We are not your grandmothers and grandfathers in ACP. And I know some chapters that's what I think of. We wanted to make this organization that already existed, that had a name, to see if we could make it work more effectively for justice in our community.